Duty pilot fights to land a crippled jet without losing everyone on board. In Mexico City, a blazing fuel truck suddenly explodes. What went wrong at this railroad crossing? And when a Las Vegas hotel catches fire without warning, guests gamble everything in an effort to stay alive. It looks like a normal descent, but this DC-10 carrying nearly 300 people is out of control and on a disaster course to the Sioux City Airport in Iowa. It ranks among the worst plane crashes in the United States, but the story behind it is a desperate account of one of the most incredible landings in aviation history. Even though the plane suffered a mechanical failure no one thought was possible, the crew pulled off a miracle.
We are presently #1 for takeoff.
United Airlines Flight 232 from Denver, Colorado to Chicago begins as a routine flight, but 1 hour after takeoff, 37,000 feet over Iowa, a loud explosion rocks the plane.
There then followed some very hard shuddering of the airframe. It would be like if you were driving your car down a cobblestone road at fairly high speed, and then after that 10 seconds of vibration, it became smooth, and we were just kind of like a leaf falling from a tree.
Among the passengers is airline captain Dennis Fitch. He trains other DC-10 pilots. He'll soon become the plane's most important passenger.
I knew that something was wrong. I didn't know that it was terribly wrong.
It's worse than anyone could have imagined. The plane's #2 engine above the tail has exploded, knocking out the main hydraulic system and the 2 backup systems meant for situations like this. The pilot now has no way of steering the jet. The captain quickly summons Fitch to the cockpit. His expertise could be their only hope.
The initial feeling was, you're going to die today. It's just a question of how long is it going to take Iowa to come up and hit you.
Then he remembers what an instructor once told him.
An airplane, you don't go anywhere, you take it someplace. I believed that somehow, some way, we as a crew, we were going to beat the odds, we're going to survive, and we're going to save all these people as well.
Clear to land, wind 0 to wind is 020 at 900, gusting to 201.
Fitch and the captain come up with an improbable plan. All they have to work with is the power of the remaining 2 wing engines. Fitch takes charge of the throttles. He controls the plane's altitude by powering both engines up or down. To turn left, he decreases the engine power on the left side engine and reverses the procedure to turn right.
By no means, by any pilot's definition, would you say we were under control.
For 33 intense minutes, Fitch and the crew struggle to keep the plane in the air. Tail rudder damage makes turning right extremely difficult, so they must fly in circles, corkscrewing their way towards Sioux City, 50 miles away.
I will describe to you it simply, it's the most alive I've ever been in my life. Those 30+ minutes that I was up there seemed more like 5 in real time.
In the cabin, frightened passengers are told to prepare for a rough landing or worse.
And that pregnant pause told it all. Worse is exactly what it was.
Passenger Charlie Martz, a former Navy pilot, was seated in the plane's midsection.
Here I am in a tin can. I can't get on. I said, God, let me out of here. Let me do something. I couldn't do anything except sit there.
At 3:58 p.m., the Sioux City control tower spots the crippled airliner approaching.
We could make the runway. That's where the emergency equipment was. That's where our salvation was, even if it didn't turn out really well.
The aircraft is sinking dangerously fast.
Let's get control of this airplane. We're going to put it down wherever it happens to be. He's coming down real fast.
this fear that if I lost consciousness, I'd never get back.
It's more than an hour before rescuers can get them out.
I remember in all that pain, I felt somebody's hand on my chest pat me and says, "You're okay, buddy, I got you." And I'll never forget that as long as I live.
As the wreckage burns, Charlie Martz finds himself hanging upside down in thick smoke. He frees himself, then searches in vain for an elderly woman he had befriended.
She was really a nice lady, and... Give me a break. She didn't make it.
Martz has only minor injuries. 111 are dead, but 184 have survived in the face of insurmountable odds. Almost immediately, investigators begin the monumental job of piecing together the wreckage. The key question is, why did all three of the plane's hydraulic systems fail? On a DC-10, each system serves as a backup for the others. The idea that all three could malfunction simultaneously was considered so remote as to be beyond the realm of probability.
There's a factor of what they call 10 to the minus 9th, and that's 1 in a billion. In other words, it's thought to be so far out there that it's just going to be so freak.
Investigators believe a damaged engine fan disc was the cause. The disc broke apart and the engine exploded, sending shrapnel flying through all three hydraulic lines which converge in the tail. As a result of the accident, all DC-10s are now fitted with an additional backup hydraulic system, and some newer planes are equipped with a computer that could do what Dennis Fitch did manually if flight controls are lost. After the accident, Fitch endured 16 months of surgery and rehabilitation, but the worst part was waiting to fly again.
I got back on the DC-10 and I flew my first trip from San Francisco to Honolulu, October 15th, 1990, a date I'll never forget. I cried all the way across the Pacific. I was so happy.
By all rights, Flight 232 should have gone down in an Iowa cornfield, killing all on board. In computer simulations, no pilot was able to duplicate the miracle that Dennis Fitch and the crew of Flight 232 pulled off. After the break, a freight train plows into a petrol tanker that tried to outrun it. And how a fire in a high-rise Las Vegas hotel threatens to kill hundreds of guests. Mexico City is one of the most chaotic places on Earth. Over 20 million people are crammed into this sprawling, smog-choked metropolis. TV newsman Eduardo Salazar and his cameraman, Jorge Pliego, report on the city's traffic gridlock every day.
I am in the helicopter all mornings. We do news traffic, and if there is an accident or something like that, we'll report it.
This morning, Pliego spots a fire on a railway line below.
We saw a huge column of smoke, and they told us that it was a crash, a big crash. Fuel tank crashed against the train. The fire was all around the train and all around the vehicle.
You get excited and your adrenaline starts pumping.
The news chopper moves in for a closer look. A tanker truck loaded with 3,000 gallons of petrol has been hit by a train carrying 30 passengers and is burning. Yet traffic continues to pass by as if nothing has happened. No one seems to realize how dangerous the situation could become. The crash starts a fire that is rapidly heating up the petrol still sealed in one of the tanker compartments. It is a potentially explosive situation, yet there's no sign of firefighters who are delayed by traffic. Police, led by Miguel Enrique, risked their lives to evacuate the train passengers.
We had to take care of the people in danger. I mean, we as policemen cannot think about what can happen to us.
Because of the heat, pressure inside the tanker builds dangerously. The train's passengers are now safely removed, but Enrique sees a young child wandering in the street near the fire.
I made signs for him to leave, but he didn't do it. So I ran to him to pull him away, but in that very moment, the explosion occurred.
500 feet above the accident, Salazar and Pliego feel the heat of the blast.
And suddenly, a huge explosion came all over the place. The big ball of fire was getting closer to the helicopter, so it was very scary for us.
But you keep on recording. If the helicopter were closer, the fragments of the truck would have hit the helicopter.
Down on the street, Enrique shields the young boy from the blast with his own body.
The explosion wave threw me way to the other side of the street. I felt something burning me when I fell down.
The boy is unharmed, but Enrique and the other officers are seriously burned. But thanks to their efforts, there are no deaths. Firefighters arrive and attack the blaze with special foam. The fire is quickly extinguished. 4 weeks later, Enrique and his men are back on the job, but still nursing their second and third degree burns. The accident happened at this busy rail crossing in the poor working class area of Campestro, Guadalumpana. On the morning of the crash, the neighborhood was busy, as always, and traffic across the tracks was steady. Unfortunately, in a scene played out at rail crossings all over Mexico City, cars and trucks race to beat the trains.
The problem was the truck driver. He tried to beat the train, but it is impossible. It was careless of the driver.
The decrepit state of Mexico's rail system is also to blame, says journalist Victor Stafron.
The railroad has always been very, very old. There are trains from the 1920s, and that is why the signals have not been updated. And because of not updating them, there is a greater risk of accidents. People now feel unsafe traveling by train.
Ya se siente insegura viajando en tren.
The accident site has no barriers or flashing lights to warn of trains.
In Mexico, there's many cross trains that don't have the signs, the correct signs, to alert the people, the drivers, that the train is going to pass.
After the accident, the driver of the truck went into hiding to evade criminal charges. The number of trains using the crossing was cut back after the explosion, but thousands of badly marked crossings remain all across Mexico City. Until the railroad crossings are upgraded, many people in this crowded capital worry that it's only a matter of time before there's another incident like this one. Las Vegas, the gambling capital of the world. In the early morning hours, the tables are still open at the MGM Grand, one of the premier hotel casinos in the city that never sleeps. Al and Trudy Kalis are on vacation from Los Angeles. They're in bed on the 18th floor, the highest floor in the hotel. At 7 in the morning, they awake to the sound of sirens and the smell of smoke.
We opened up the door, and the hall was filled with smoke. It was that quick.
As 3,000 guests wake up to the nightmare of a hotel on fire, Panicked people crowd onto their balconies to escape the choking smoke, but Al and Trudy don't have that option.
The handle was broken. There was a maintenance card on it saying, "Door doesn't open." A real revelation to me in the middle of this fire.
Like dozens of others, the Kalises are trapped in their room and rapidly running out of fresh air.
I literally couldn't get enough oxygen, and I was smelling only smoke, and I was breathless. And at that moment, I had the sense that this might be my passage out.
Many guests make the fatal error of rushing out of their rooms and into toxic smoke-filled corridors. Overcome by the fumes, they try to return, but the doors have locked behind them. That's where the bodies of many that die are found. Although they're gasping for air, the Kalises stay in their room, and eventually Al smashes a tiny window so they can breathe.
We laid on the floor with our face stuck out that window and pulled the blackout draperies around us so that we could keep out as much smoke that was coming into the room as we could. And we watched the activities down below.
They watch as firefighters extend long ladders up to the hotel windows and help terrified victims inch their way to safety. Above them, a rescue helicopter hovers perilously close to the building, rescuing the lucky few who've made it to the roof. The helicopter crew manages to pluck victims from the upper floor balconies, but there's no way of reaching people still trapped in their rooms. Firefighters' ladders fall short of the 18th floor, where Al and Trudy's situation is getting more and more desperate by the second. Smoke from the fire is shooting up the elevator shafts straight to the 18th floor. It's sucked into the hotel's air conditioning system, and fans are blowing the acrid fumes throughout the poorly ventilated upper floors. Rescuers in the street below try to calm the trapped guests.
Keep back away from the windows! Do not attempt to jump from the windows!
Firefighters redouble their efforts to bring the blaze on the MGM's lower floors under control and to clear a path to the desperate victims on the top floor of the Inferno. Firefighters eventually manage to find the heart of the blaze in the delicatessen on the ground floor of the MGM. By the time firefighters like Bert Sweeney arrive, it's grown into a huge fireball.
Fireball that came out of the delicatessen completely filled the door of the delicatessen. And it came out and bounced off the floor.
The firefighters race to escape the speeding ball of flame, but they can't outrun the heat.
My facepiece had melted into a small ball, about a fourth of the size of the original facepiece. That's how hot it got in there.
As firefighters finally contain the blaze below, rescuers fight their way to the top of the hotel and eventually to the room where Al and Trudy are desperately clinging to life.
He came and he said, "Follow me," and we just walked along in the dark, holding on to each other chain-wise so we wouldn't fall because there was no light. We knew we were going to be okay.
After 4 terrifying hours trapped in their room, Al and Trudy emerged to a scene which looks like a war zone.
There were people who were in various states of fear. There were people crying. There were people who were elderly. They were having a hard time breathing.
There were no lights on or anything, no emergency lights that we could see.
How come there's no fire alarm in the MGM? I was on the 12th floor and there's no alarm.
In all, 85 people are dead. And as investigators survey the wreckage, they discover that the tragedy could have been avoided. Fire investigators traced the source of the blaze to faulty wiring in the delicatessen refrigerator. Because of lax fire regulations, most of the MGM was not equipped with water sprinklers. The fire had ample opportunity to rage out of control. And when the blaze first broke out, a member of the hotel staff switched the fire alarms off, thinking they were triggered by mistake. The MGM Grand was rebuilt, is now called Bally's. It boasts one of the most advanced fire safety systems in the country, with hotel employees monitoring high-tech fire sensors. Supervisor Mary McMall says this multi-million-dollar computer system will forestall any repeat of the 1980 disaster.
During a fire, the computer will automatically unlock the doors so that the guests can get in, and also, if need be, they can get back out on any floor that they would have to escape from.
In the wake of the fire, the hotel and insurance companies paid out £80 million in damages. But as a result of this tragedy, much stricter fire codes were enacted throughout the United States. Today, smoke alarms and sprinkler systems are mandatory in all high-rise buildings. But for Al and Trudy Kalis, the scars remain.
For a number of years after this, we used to request hotel rooms 6th floor or under, because we learned that the ladders don't go any higher than 6 floors.
Today, the Kalises say most of the traumatic memories have faded. When they travel now, they have peace of mind because they know their hotels are safer.
And more heart-stopping moments from around the world at the same time next Tuesday night.